In every financial crisis of the last half-century, from the 1987 crash to the 1997 Asian financial crisis, from the 2008 collapse to the 2020 pandemic shock, one thing keeps happening that seems to defy logic. Money runs to Japan, not to the world's largest economy, not to the global financial center of New York or London, but to a nation that has spent more than 30 years battling deflation. A nation whose government debt exceeds 250% of GDP, the highest ratio in the developed world. A nation with one of the oldest populations on Earth. And yet, when chaos erupts, the Japanese yen strengthens. When banks tremble, the yen rallies. And when global markets panic, the yen is treated as the financial equivalent of a bunker built into bedrock, a safe haven. Why? Why does a currency born in a nation with such unusual economic challenges become the world's psychological anchor when everything else falls apart? And why is this phenomenon not a modern anomaly, but the result of 150 years of economic engineering, political shock, and structural forces that turned the yen into something far more powerful than just money? Today we're going to uncover the real answer, one grounded not in myths, but in historically verifiable events, treaties, crises, and financial architecture. Because the story of the yen is not a story of luck. It's a story of design. A design that began long before Japan became a global industrial giant, and long before investors started calling it a safe haven. A design forged through empire, collapse, reconstruction, and a financial system unlike any other. And the truth behind it all begins with one chilling line. The world trusts the yen, because Japan never allows itself to collapse. How did that happen, and why does it still hold today? Let's go back to where this story really begins. This is the wealth timeline, where we uncover how money, power, and history are woven together to shape the world we live in. The unusual history of a global anchor. To understand the yen's status, we need to go back to the late 19th century, when Japan ended over 2 centuries of isolation under the Tokugawa shogunate. In 1868, the Meiji Restoration transformed the country from a feudal society into a modern state. Within just a few years, Japan adopted Western institutions, industrialized at extraordinary speed, and, critically, created a unified national currency anchored to a recognizable global standard. This was the birth of the yen in 1871, modeled after European decimal systems and tied to silver. But something important happened. Japan understood very early that credibility was the foundation of monetary power. So when silver prices destabilized global markets in the 1880s and 1890s, Japan made a strategic shift. In 1897, it joined the world's gold standard, becoming one of the first non-Western empires to do so. From that moment, Japan wasn't just participating in the global system, it was playing by the same monetary rules as the dominant powers of the era. But this raises a question. How did a currency from a newly industrializing empire build trust so quickly? And why did that trust survive, even after Japan descended into war and near-total destruction? A currency built for stability. The foundations of the yen's reputation were laid through 3 interconnected forces, all historically documented and measurable. Early institutional discipline. From the 1870s through the early 1930s, Japan built a modern financial state. It formed the Bank of Japan, 1882, one of the earliest modern central banks outside Europe. A national banking system regulated through state oversight. An industrial policy backed by stable taxation and predictable monetary practices. This created a reputation, even among foreign governments, that Japan, unlike many developing nations of the era, did not inflate away its obligations. But there is a twist. 2. The military state and wartime finance. In the 1930s and 1940s, Japan's economy became a command system directed by the military. The yen was no longer tied to gold. Inflation surged. The empire collapsed. Yet, unlike many defeated nations, Japan's post-war reconstruction did not dissolve its institutions, because the third force would reshape everything. 3. The US occupation and post-war reconstruction, 1945-1952, under General Douglas MacArthur and the Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, Japan rebuilt its economy with a restructured central bank, a stabilized yen pegged at 360 yen per dollar, a system designed to prevent hyperinflation. This created one of the most stable financial architectures of the 20th century, and it left the world with an unusual truth. The yen entered the modern era with zero sovereign defaults, deep central bank discipline, and one of the most conservative monetary cultures ever recorded. But those early roots only explain the foundation. The real rise, the moment the yen became an anchor for the world, came with Japan's astonishing transformation after World War II. From Reconstruction to global financial power. From the 1950s to the late 1980s, Japan achieved one of the fastest sustained economic growth periods in recorded history. This expansion reshaped global finance through three powerful, verified developments. The export miracle, 1950 to 1970. By the 1970s, Japan was producing the world's leading automobiles, the world's highest quality electronics, advanced steel, ships, and machinery. This export engine generated massive trade surpluses, causing the yen to steadily appreciate. But here's the key: Japan saved more than it spent. Household savings rates regularly exceeded 20%, and corporate savings surged. This built a domestic pool of capital so large that Japan became a creditor nation early, long before China ever would. Deep savings, loaned abroad, strengthened yen's credibility. But this strength carried a hidden cost. The Plaza Accord, 1985. By the mid-1980s, the United States and Europe believed Japan's export machine was overpowering global trade. In 1985, the US, Japan, West Germany, France, and the UK signed the Plaza Accord, a coordinated agreement to push the dollar down and the yen up. It worked. The yen appreciated over 50% in just 2 years. Japan's economy surged. Japanese investors bought Rockefeller Center, Pebble Beach, and billions in global assets. And in doing so, they created something unprecedented. The yen carry trade. Borrow cheap yen, invest in higher-yielding assets abroad, earn the spread. This built an enormous global ecosystem dependent on yen stability. But again, that strength carried a hidden cost. The asset bubble, late 1980, the combination of a rising yen, loose domestic monetary policy, massive capital inflows, created one of the largest asset bubbles in financial history. By 1989, the Nikkei 225 reached 38,957, a record still unmatched today. And Tokyo land prices became so inflated that the grounds of the imperial palace were, famously and accurately, said to be worth more than all the land in California. But then came the breaking point. The lost decades begin in 1990-1991. The bubble burst. Equity values collapsed. Land prices fell for over a decade. Banks were left with trillions of yen in bad loans. The Bank of Japan responded with near zero interest rates, quantitative easing, 2001, financial rescue mechanisms, regulatory restructuring. This period became known as Japan's lost decades, a cycle of deflationary pressure and slow growth. Yet something extraordinary happened. The yen did not collapse, it strengthened. During the 1997 Asian financial crisis, when currencies around the region fell 30 to 80%, the yen appreciated. During the 2008 crisis, the yen strengthened to below 90 per dollar. Even during COVID-19, the yen was treated as a haven before Japan's yield curve policy weakened it temporarily. The question is, why did a country with sluggish growth, aging demographics, and enormous public debt become the world's crisis currency? The aftermath holds the answer. The yen becomes a global anchor. After the bubble burst, Japan built the most conservative financial system in the developed world. Massive domestic ownership of debt. Over 90% of Japanese government bonds are held domestically. Pension funds, insurers, banks, households, all hold JGBs. This means Japan is not dependent on foreign creditors, so panic selling, the kind that destroys emerging markets, never materializes. Deflation creates expectation of strong yen. When prices fall over time, a currency's real purchasing power rises. Japan's mild deflation entrenched the idea that holding yen preserves wealth. Investors trust it because Japanese institutions prioritize stability above all else. The yen carry trade locks the world into Japan. Trillions of dollars in global financial positions rely on borrowing in yen. So when crises hit, investors reverse the carry trade, buying back yen, pushing it higher. In other words, Japan's low rates turned its currency into the world's financial shock absorber. And that reputation has only strengthened. Why the yen remains the ultimate safe haven. Today, 3 historically verifiable forces keep the yen at the center of global stability. 1. Japan is the world's largest creditor nation. Since 1991, Japan has consistently held the world's largest net international investment position. This means Japan owns more foreign assets than any other nation. A strong currency helps maintain those assets. And global markets know Japan has the resources to defend itself. 2. The Bank of Japan's predictable policy framework. While other central banks shift rapidly, the BOJ has kept stable interest rate policies, conservative regulatory systems, meticulous communication. This consistency builds trust. Even when Japan introduced yield curve control in 2016, it did so gradually, transparently, and without shocking markets. Trust is a safe haven. 3. Domestic savings culture. Despite demographic change, Japan still maintains one of the highest household financial asset pools relative to GDP. This creates a self-funding financial ecosystem, something rare in the 21st century. And this leads to the final reveal. The yen is a safe haven, not because Japan is risk-free, but because Japan's financial architecture absorbs risk without breaking. It is the result of a century and a half of disciplined institutions, domestic financing, predictable central banking, and an economy that, even in crisis, never defaults, never collapses, and never shocks the world with sudden instability. When markets panic, investors flee to the place they trust most, a system that bends but does not break. The 3 takeaways. In 1. Safe havens are built, not born. The yen's strength reflects 150 years of institutional discipline, not luck. 2. Stability outperforms growth. Even during the lost decades, the yen became stronger because Japan prioritizes predictability over speed. 3. The world depends on Japan more than it realizes. The yen carry trade, Japan's creditor status, and its massive domestic savings system make the yen a global stabilizer during crises. Because in the world of wealth and power, history never ends, it just changes hands. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden chapter of financial history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Wealth Timeline, and turn on the bell icon, because the next story might just rewrite what you thought you knew about power.